so I think everyone's pretty much here. So let's get the ball rolling so we can all get a nice little break and get some more food in our bellies. We'll go into a food coma together. Okay, so that's how you unify your friendship, food comas. So we're right here today. What I brought is a little bit different from what I normally have. Normally I take all my organic food waste from my tree trimmings. So everything in my garden gets recycled. Everything in my house gets recycled pretty much. Nothing goes into the trash can normally. But this time around, I actually had some wood chips that I was like, trying to load into the back of my truck, and all these sticky materials were making it very hard to get my pitchfork in and out. And I was like, so I separated a pile, and I was like, that's some good kindling. So now we have biochar fuel for free from a local wood chip, service. So I mean, if you look around here and you see some sticky materials, you could technically gather them. We want to make sure they're dry first of all. All of our materials here are pretty dry. They got hit once with rain, so it may not be perfect, but we're gonna do our best. So thank you, Anthony. So let's get, can we get 2 people to help start building it? Prema's on it. She's already like biochar. I'm gonna take both tanks just in case.
I got my stick.
All right, we got Jose. Oh, Jennifer. Yeah, let's let Jennifer jump in since she hasn't participated yet.
Jennifer, go.
Well, we got 2 people. All right, come on, Jose. You haven't jumped in on this yet either, huh? Not really much. Okay, so basically what we're gonna do is just, if you guys can make 2 piles, make 1 pile of all kindling. You can actually keep one over there, that's fine. 2 piles of all kindling, and then we're gonna take all the big logs on the bottom, and we're gonna put them on the bottom. So we talked about this a lot. So again, biochar. Some things that I use it for at home. Of course, I use it in my soil. I use it to filter water. This stuff, I don't know who grew it, so I'm not going to eat it, but mine that I make at home, I eat it. I actually carry it with me at all times. I brought some with me if anyone wants to try it later. So it's high quality. You can literally purify your blood by consuming charcoal, just as good as dialysis. It's pretty amazing. The charcoal is so magnetic that it has, as it goes through your digestive tract, it can actually, so there normally nutrients go from your digestive tract into your bloodstream. You can kind of reverse that flow with that strong magnetism that's on the char. So you can pull things out of your blood into your digestive tract, and adhere it onto the surface of the charcoal, and then pass it. So it's a great way to detoxify your system. Of course, it cleans your internals, your intestines and stuff out too. So I mean, from cleaning up people, cleaning up air, because everyone has, I mean, not everyone, but we all have heard of air filters. Hopefully you have one in your house. Our air is pretty contaminated almost anywhere we go. So carbon is generally included in a lot of those air filters. Again, water filtration. And of course, I'm just reiterating, soil. It's a great home for microbes, great home for your compost life. And as Janelle and others were talking about, you can use it to capture gases that are being emitted from your compost, and also leachates that are essentially, when you're watering your compost, anything that's leaching out the bottom can be, if you have a multi-inch layer of char at the bottom, you can capture that as well. So it's not running off into your sandy soil, or I know there's some regulations that are very particular about that. So perfect. Let's just scoot those back a hair, get them out of the way so no one trips on them. Thank you. Great work, team. Can we give them a round of applause? Woo! Okay, so don't go far. We're gonna have you continue doing some more. We got some free labor here. So I'm just gonna move this pile over here just to keep it right in front of everybody. So if you notice, that's the biggest diameter we have for this. Most of the logs here are pretty small diameter. It's pretty much, you pretty much don't want to go over 3 inches in diameter for a small little 3 foot by 3 foot, 2 foot by 2 foot fire. Because what ends up happening is, this is what we're going to convert into charcoal. This is the fuel, and the smoke is the fuel too. So this is kind of like what we're baking. This is what we're putting in the oven. If it was any bigger in diameter, it actually will not fully char. So that means you're just going to end up with partially charred, and then you try to break it open and there's going to be a bunch of wood still inside of it. We don't want that. We want it to be as fully charred as possible. So now all we really got to do is super simple, is just cover this material. So just literally like a little bird's nest right on top. So I know this is the opposite. Everyone normally puts their kindling on the bottom, right? We light the fire from below. But what do we also have typically with most fires? Smoke. Lots of smoke. Yeah. So we're gonna.
On the outside?
Yeah. So let's kind of round it off so it doesn't fall over. We don't want a fire falling on us. And then let's. Perfect. I'll take that on this side because I have a little pocket. All right, and just do your best to try not to include dirt, but this is not a perfect science. Okay, if you see any weird air pockets where you can see a lot of logs, just kind of move these guys and make it nice and covered. Okay. So, like a little fever thing. Yeah. So basically, smoke is a flammable gas. So I like to think of it like your stove. When you turn on your stove and then the gas comes from below and it ignites, and then obviously it's a different type of gas, but you see a clean flame essentially. There's no smoke coming out, so gas comes from below, it gets ignited, looks clean. It's the same kind of idea here. Smoke is actually a flammable gas, so by having it come from below, so we're gonna have the fire on top, and then the smoke's gonna be emitted from below into the fire, and it's gonna burn clean. And so majority of the smoke will be eliminated. The only smoke you will see is in areas where the fire doesn't burn it. So if you'll notice, like, say for instance, there's no fire over here, you might see a little bit of smoke emit from that area. So let's just get started, so we can continue talking while it's burning. So with the propane tank is typically how I light it. You can also use, hold on, I'm gonna take this guy off because I don't want this plastic to somehow get burned. You can use cardboard too to start it. I've used that before. Sorry, I had some leakage happening over here. I've used cardboard as, like, especially like we've done like huge ones where it was like about 30 foot by 10, 12, 15 foot. I forget the exact. It's been some time, but we did some really big burns, and we actually, to kind of expedite the process, we put a little bit of torn cardboard to kind of accelerate the kindling process. But basically, we start from the center and we work our way out. You don't start from the edge and work your way forward, because then you have fire here and your tank's going to be right over it. So it's something I learned, luckily, by not blowing up. There you go. You got the experience. Experience. Honestly, it's not really necessary. I mean, so look right here, like, where's the smoke? You see where the smoke's emitting from the edge, where the fire's not happening? And then the moment you move the fire over, it will, the smoke kind of gets eliminated. So I'm just gonna keep working my way out, but like, look here and then look up. In some areas you definitely do, and it also depends on the size of your fire. So definitely looking into your local burn kind of regulations is smart. Usually with something small in your backyard, it may not matter as much, but still look up your local laws, because everyone's region is a little bit differently. In a what? I'm pretty sure you could, yeah. The premise is the same. The thing is, though, is if you're using a Weber, one thing that we learned last time we did a burn is if you have any holes on the bottom or the sides, the smoke's going to find a way out there. So you end up, so you want to cover your holes in the bottom so we can see a little bit of smoke, but we have to really like get the flame nice and even all the way around. Again, also some of this material got a little bit of moisture, unfortunately, from one rain, so we're kind of combating that a little bit, but it's not a conventional fire with tremendous amounts of smoke. What was that? No, this actually was from my backyard, or not from my backyard, but from my house. I stored it. Whew, that fire is getting nice and hot. So there is a little bit of smoke. My favorite, honestly, I feel like the cleanest is just cutting one of those. Man, this thing's getting nice and hot. Yeah. The cleanest I've ever seen it burn is out of actually like a 55-gallon burn, like the barrels. Yeah, like I cut it, just like a third of it, and it helps a lot with controlling the air movements. Because what ends up happening is if you have some really strong air movements, they can come in and they can push the smoke away from the fire, which ultimately ends up with, I think some of this too is also a little bit of our moisture, because again, we didn't really, but you can see the smoke right there coming off of that stick. Whew! I'm having a hard time getting close to this thing. All right, I'm scared to pick this. Yeah, but again, we usually have multiple burners kind of happening, so it makes it quicker. I'm gonna stay back because that's getting really hot, and I don't want to get this too much in there.
So you just do this with the woody parts. You don't want to put any leaves or
You can,
anything.
you can use leaves. Um, I think I'm just gonna let it burn as is because I don't want to put this tank too close. But there's still a little bit of smoke, but nothing too insane. Yeah. So it varies a little bit again, like where it varies depending on how you decide to do it. If you want to do it on flat ground like this, if you do it in a little burn thing, you can. And also, I actually a lot of the times, if I can help it, I like to actually do this in an area that has more wind protection, because that wind protection will actually stop the smoke from going sideways away from the fire, and then allowing the fire really to get to burn that smoke cleanly. But I mean, yeah, it's not too bad. Normally, when you're next to a campfire, you ever notice that like that smoke is constantly chasing you everywhere you go? That's not too bad. And so again, the cool thing is too, the smoke is actually a fuel. So the fire is burning hotter and faster because we're actually using that smoke to our advantage.
It's cool how it's like jumping and dancing too.
Yeah, we can all jump and dance too. Whew.
Daniel, did you ever do this in a pit?
In a pit, yeah, I've done it in like a little bit of a divot before. It worked pretty well. Um, I want to say it was a little bit cleaner than this, but not ridiculously. But I think it because again it's not allowing. It kind of keeps the sides contained a little bit, which is kind of cool. So pretty much you like it's nice to have a little bit of a container on the sides if possible, and then again no holes on the sides or on the bottom. Um, but sometimes you don't have fancy equipment. Sometimes you just have a pile of dirt, and so you just got to make do with what you got. And I'd say that we're definitely making do, because that's not too bad.
So what will be the difference for this one and doing the same thing with palm because it's more fiber?
So great question. So she wants to actually burn palm because they have a lot of palm in their area. Palm, generally speaking, it's going to have a wider diameter than more than 3 inches, right? Yeah, so you can chop it into smaller pieces, or if you wanted to burn palm in its diameter of say 10 inches or something like that, you're gonna have to make a much bigger burn pile. So a lot more kindling. The ratio that I pretty much go by, and this is a rough ratio, but it's like 2/3 kindling to 1/3 material that you're burning below.
So for the kindling, can I use the palm fronds and those? What are those palm fronds? So palm trunk and palm
I think the palm fronds are a great idea. I haven't tried it, but I would say that it's worth trying. I would do a small scale burn first. Maybe don't use the palm per se, just use the palm fronds and then some random logs. See how the palm fronds burn down and char that material. If it works out great, then I would scale up again using the palm fronds, which basically prove themselves. They're like, hey, I'm a great kindling material, but now you use a lot more of them and you start using your actual palm, chunky logs or whatever you got. Palm? It has to be they're pretty dried out. Yeah. No, well, it's not going to fully put itself out. But what we're doing is like, if you notice that there's a good portion of white, but then notice there's like some black spots in there. We actually want the top to look like this winter has set in and the snow has settled and it's just all white for the most part. That actually is just the extremities though. So we want the white to be on top, which is the ash, and then the char is going to be underneath. If you actually put it out too early, it doesn't finish the charring process. If you put it out too late, it pretty much all turns to ash and you don't end up with some char. So we're just going to kind of let it burn a little bit longer and allow some of this stuff that's black on top to actually start turning white. When it's about 98% white, that's the point when we're going to actually put it out, and we're going to do so with water over here. Yeah.
So I see people doing this with really fancy biochar machines. They're very expensive. And how are you able to do it as a pile on the ground? And these people are doing it with multi-million-dollar equipment.
Well, I mean, they're really focused on, they're getting more carbon output probably, so they're actually getting a higher yield. They might actually be creating a higher quality char in terms of more porous surface area. So there is a difference in quality and quantity coming out, but for people that come from a community of lack, we have to make do with what we got, and doing something that's again not going to be, because we live in a bowl. I live in the Central Valley, so I can't make smoke because your neighbors will get mad. I'll get sad too. So yeah, basically we have to pretty much come up with alternative techniques, and this is the technique that California, some of the universities have shown, like, hey, this is interesting, but for whatever reason they just forgot about it and they stopped talking about it, and they're like, no more burns. And I'm like, well, I'm definitely pro wood chips, but not everyone has the access to a wood chipper. It costs a lot of money sometimes for some farmers. It depends on your region and your what's available to you. This is something that's pretty much available to almost anyone, because especially a lot of farmers, they have dirt. They have a lot of it, especially because they don't want to cover it a lot of the times, unfortunately. So this is just an opportunity. But again, if you have the equipment for the fancy stuff, yeah, you're going to end up with a better char. The only thing is, though, is that if you're like in the middle, where like the Tin Man setup, where you have a barrel within a barrel, those barrels burn out. About 10, 20 burns or so, they start flaking and falling apart, and you got to buy more barrels unless you have free access to them for free or cheap. They cost me a significant amount of money where I'm from. I literally bought them. I put together the setup. I never burned with it once. Once I realized how quickly it was going to fall apart, I was like, this is ridiculous. I can't afford to buy another one of these. And so now it's just storage charcoal for me. I just take all. And so speaking on storage of charcoal, this material, I recommend that we actually let it sit far away from flammables for 2 days, and we actually keep it. We hydrate it heavily right now, and we just monitor it for those 2 days, ensuring that it doesn't reignite. You don't want to be like, oh, the charcoal's done. I put it out, and then put it in a bucket, put it inside your house, and all of a sudden your house is on fire tomorrow or whatever. Because it happens. The char will reignite. You may think you fully put it out, but that's sometimes not the case. So you got to be really careful with your char when you finish making it, and yeah. So that's something to consider.
So if there is a gardener that want to do it in their home, do you recommend to do it at the end of the summer season, because when it's cooling down, there might be a little bit of moisture in the air, and moisture is getting into the logs again?
You can pretty much do it like the way I do it at home, because I'm drying my own materials. I have to use a portion of the summer to dry it, right? So I cut the materials earlier in the season. I let them dry for like a month or 2 months, and then once they're fully dried, then I make it. So probably midsummer is usually when I end up making it. Because you have to make it unless you have like a huge storage system or like away from the rain. You have to make it before the water comes, because otherwise, once it gets wet, then it's going to create a lot of smoke and then it's going to be really hard to ignite. So yeah, I definitely, for me personally, and probably for most people, I mean, in this region, summer is probably going to be your best bet. So you don't have to have all kinds of facilities to keep your material dry for the wintertime. Any other questions? Yeah.
Will the biochar be finished once you finish making sure that it's out, or would you have to let it cure before being able to use it?
So once that 2-day period is done, you can use it. So the thing is, though, technically it's only char once you finish making it. So because it's got all these pore surfaces that are mostly vacant in terms of materials, you got to add the bio to create the biochar, right? So that process can occur in a variety of forms. You can spray it with a compost tea. You can pour compost extract on it. You can put it in your compost pile and let it participate in the microbial processes in your compost pile. Technically, you could put it directly in your soil and let the biology slowly get into it from the soil, but what ends up happening is you might actually see a reduction in productivity for that plant the first season, because if you put it in there bland, it'll start binding to nutrients in the soil and it'll hold on to them and it'll be like mine. And then after about a year of saying mine, finally it'll get into that point of excess and it'll start sharing and transacting with the soil. So if you don't want to see your plants suffer for a season, I definitely recommend adding something. And it doesn't have to be biology, it could be biological foods. So the things we were talking about earlier, the fish hydrolysases, the kelps, I forgot what sugar source you were talking about.
Oh, jaggery.
Jaggery. So whatever you can add organic foods to the surfaces too. It doesn't necessarily have to be biology added. It could be foods added that then encourage the biology that then colonize the surfaces as well.
So that's the difference between charcoal and activated charcoal.
Well, activated charcoal, I'm not a master on it, but I think it goes through an extra process to make it more adsorbent, right? Yeah.
Activated charcoal typically is like superheated after charcoal is made, and it exponentially increases the pore space of the charcoal that you have. Usually you can't accomplish that
With this. Yeah, you need special equipment.
Can you repeat what you said?
Yeah, so basically, no, it's okay. So basically, you're getting more pore surface area when you're making activated charcoal. They're superheating it after the char is initially made, and it's just not something that you can readily do at home without the proper equipment. Maybe if you have super scientists setting equipment at home, you can do it, but this will not make activated charcoal. But so if you look at biochar though, a lot of people will say charged. Oh, I charged my biochar with this. But what they're really talking about is they added things to the surfaces. So there's a difference too. Like a sponge absorbs things, charcoal adsorbs. So it doesn't absorb. When something absorbs something, it becomes one with, essentially. You can't really tell once they. You literally can't. They literally are like a sponge and the water almost become one, essentially. Where with this, it's not absorbing it into the charcoal. It's actually adding it onto the surfaces. All that surface area, all that pore structure. It's adsorbing it onto it. So we want to adsorb. Sorry, it's a little bee. Come on, dude. I know I just got his wings all dusty, which isn't good for. Okay. I just risked getting stung, but I didn't want to see him burn in the fire. Also, if he would have stung me, that would probably have been bad for him too. But anyway, so yeah, the activated charcoal is, again, that's something we're doing. Oh, excuse me. So the charged is something that you'll see a lot if you look at biochar, and what they're really just saying is I added foods, I added biology, and if it's uncharged, they didn't add anything, and it's just char at that point. It's almost there. Yeah.
The smell changed. You can tell, like, from what was it, from the kindling that was burning,
and it's still pretty limited in smoke production, which is pretty cool. All hail the fire gods.
Can you process it further? Like, for example, break it down afterwards?
That's a great question. So we asked if we can process the charcoal further, and I definitely recommend that, because what ends up happening is if you just have a log, the pore structures are on the outside of that log, and there's so many pore structures on the inside of that log that are basically jailed up or locked away. And so what I do at home is sometimes I'll just put it on a I like to do Aztec dance actually. So we'll put some tarps down and we'll do some dances on top of it. So we'll put a tarp, we'll put the char, and we'll first we break it up a little bit, and then put another tarp on it, and we do some dances on it, and we play around. You can drive your vehicle over it.
Way to energize it too, though, because you're getting all the energy from the dancing.
Yeah.
Totally.
But yeah, you can. There's basically the idea is though you want to break it down, and depending on how you're going to apply it, depends on like what size particle you want. So for us, we have heavy clay soils. I like mine to be like roughly the size of perlite, because perlite, if you kind of put it in soils, it makes it a little fluffier, creates some structure, allows air and water kind of movement. So the charcoal can kind of create that aggregate type of structure that allows for soil and water movement. Of course, it's adsorbent, so it's not just going to allow everything to just run through. It will add water, add nutrients to its surface too. So it's going to add sustainability to your system. So yeah, so definitely break it down. If you wanted to, you could keep it in larger formats, or for instance, if you wanted to go super fine, I know farmers who are actually particleizing this into a really fine dust, and they actually run it via irrigation. Yeah, so because it has to be very fine to be able to go through the emitters and not clog anything, but it's possible. And then you get it right there where you're sometimes adding your extracts, and boom, then you're charging it, right? So you could even do it at the same time. So it's pretty cool.
Can you use straw for kindling?
Straw for kindling. Maybe in small amounts. I think in high quantities, though, if you only use straw, it might suffocate it a little bit. You could experiment with that, but I would be hesitant to use all straw as kindling. Any other questions? Okay, so I'm going to tell you a quick story while this is finishing. It's probably got a couple more minutes. It's almost there. So everyone has heard of the story of El Dorado, right? Maybe? Somewhat? Yeah, city of gold. So the conquistadors, came through the Amazon, and they were just like, oh my gosh, these people must be super rich because they have this soil that's as fertile as Spain, and they had crops growing. Their landscape looks so similar to Spain, but they're like, this is insanely impossible because these Spaniards knew that the Amazonian soil was not capable of sustaining the foods that we like to eat. Not like that's not the ones that support large-scale, sustainable, civilizations. And so they're like, there's something going on here. He reports it back to Spain. They think he's crazy, and nowadays, when scientists actually venture out into the Amazon, they've looked at those locations where basically where the conquistador is like, look, I saw this civilization here, here, here. He mapped it out all along the Amazonian River. Well, interestingly, the scientists nowadays have been able to correlate that all those locations that he was like, you know what, there's these super civilizations. Yes, there was a presence there because there's man-made soil there. And what were they doing? They were composting. They were making biochar. And they were taking all of their clay pottery waste shards, and they were kind of combining it. And this process combined made a super soil that dates back to like, I believe the time of like, Jesus, and there's like really like ancient times. And this soil is mined and sold to this day because it's so rich and fertile. They grew corn in the Amazon in this charcoal-like soil, and or this compost char, this man-made sustainable system or soil, and they noticed a difference of 880% increased yield with their corn. So because their soil there is so poor, we wouldn't see the same increase right here because our soil is much better, but you will see an increase. And so it was just really interesting to see how these cultures have been using char, have been using compost, have been using these materials, and the compost biology too. That's a big part of it. When the scientists are trying to figure out like what's going on with this super soil, they find out it's alive. So when they mine it, the farmers that farm this soil, they swear that in 20 years they can actually re-mine that same area again because the leaf foliage falling on it grows because the soil's alive. And they have found that. They looked under the microscope and they got a significant amount of life, and they're like, how do we recreate this? And they're like super technical trying to figure it all out, and I'm just laughing because I'm just like, you just compost, you make your char, and and you feed it. And it takes time. Normally, a long time ago, it took a lot of time because they didn't have the technology we have. We have brewers, we have Venturi siphons, and we have all the stuff that we could make things happen so fast. So yeah, they were able to live in a rainforest that only grew. It didn't support the food that they needed, and they were able to change that soil so that they could live sustainably in high populations. So really, the story of El Dorado is about black gold and compost. Right. Any final questions? Man, this looks like, how are we doing on time?
4:30, we are good.
Okay. Yeah, it's almost there. Go faster. Well, does anyone else want to share any questions, thoughts, stories correlating to maybe biochar, maybe compost?
So if you added air, would it go faster?
If you added air, would it go faster? I don't think so. And the interesting thing is too, is this charcoal is actually being made primarily in a lacking in air, because you think that like, oh, there's air all around, and this is being made with air, but the fire is consuming the air surrounding that carbon material. So it's pretty interesting how it can generate that in such an open environment. But yeah, I don't think it was. I mean I can double check that though if you're interested in learning more.
I've only seen you do this in on cement before. The first time I've seen you do it in dirt. When you add the water, how is it not going to become mud?
Is it not going to become mud? The ash is definitely going to mix with the mud. The char is going to remain. Yeah, it's like a skeleton. It's just going to sit there right on top.
Question.
Yeah.
What amounts do you add biochar to like a tree or your compost pile?
So I go with the same rates that Janelle was talking about earlier, 10 to 12%. I've seen people go as high as 18%. It varies depending on what crop you're using. Like I've seen cannabis where they had like certain varieties and they had like pronounced THC and CBD and all these different beneficial compounds that they were seeking that change. But then they also had another variety that didn't do as well with the higher ratios. So I feel like your best like average is 10, maybe 12%. In my experience, it seems pretty consistent that way. Plus, we can only make so much of this material, and where there's a lot of soils to treat. So if you put too much in one spot, then there's less love to spread around.
So the best use for this pile when it's all done will be to go into the clear compost boxes.
Yeah, or if they're going to plant some of those, like from the nursery right there, if they're going to put some plants in the ground, or even if they're just doing some like, this works great for like nurseries too. If you have like a pot, like if you have a lot of plants in pots, because stops things from leaching out and running away. So you can kind of keep your nutrients in the system. Yeah, just 10. You can do it on top of the soil. You can do it mixed in. When I generally do it when I'm mixing it in. But again, if you put it on top of the soil, it will help you with. Okay, we're starting to generate a little more smoke, so I'm probably gonna put it out momentarily. But if you put it on top of the soil, again, it stops things from off-gassing because it's a filter, and if the soil is off-gassing and that gas is going through a filter, gets caught in the system, and then it gets recycled. So it's pretty cool. Okay, so it's mostly there. We're just gonna put it out because I don't like the fact that we're smoking too much. Plus, I don't want too much of this wood to turn to ash. So let's do it. Thank you.
You just turn it to the right.
Okay, cool. Thank you, sir. So right now, you're gonna see what looks like smoke is not smoke. It's gonna be a bunch of steam up in the air. So being close to it, when you're doing this, be cautious. The steam's hot, so don't burn your face. Oh, try to find a happy medium. There we go. So again, that's steam, not smoke. You can feel it. If you put your hands in it, you can feel the moisture. So this isn't really a great like campfire style, because I mean most campfires you want to keep your fire burning, right? So you keep adding logs, keep adding logs. This is you're actually pretty much want to put it out at a certain point, and obviously then your fire bin's going to be all soaking wet. So this is not great for prolonged fires, although you still have enough opportunity to make some s'mores. So I've done this with kids, and they enjoyed the s'mores for sure. There you go. Let's migrate to your campsite now. So I'm thoroughly saturating this stuff. I want to make sure it doesn't reignite.
For big, for water purposes, do you usually use the filtered water for this one too, or
Yeah, that's a good.
with unpotable water?
Yeah, so Prema has a great question, and she asks about filtration. And typically, I actually, and I that's my fault. Typically, I actually put a filter on the hose, because otherwise, now the charcoal is a filter, and we're filtering out anything that's in this water. But hey, it's kind of cool too at the same time, because hey, we'll save the charcoal in the filter, and we're using this as a filter. So hey, win-win. But yeah, so when I do put out my charcoal though, and I'm gonna add biology, typically I use filtered water to put it out. Yeah, it's almost done steaming. I just want to. No, go for it. What do you have?
No, I'm just saying we should have laundry business along with this one, so use the steam to iron the clothes.
That's some permaculture multitasking right there. Yeah, we can do that. Definitely the smaller pieces. This bigger chunk right here, because of it just wasn't the ideal burn. There's a lot of kindling that was stacked around the sides rather than, like I said, depending on how you stack it, and really having you have different, I'm trying to figure out how to turn this thing off. Different burn bins and all these different things. They all create different burns essentially. But so you can see here. Let's see how hot this is. So nada. This, if you really pay attention, you can actually see some brown color. So this, if you don't mind getting your hands dirty, you can pass this around. You can see the brown color on this, and that shows you basically that this is not fully charred. And there's char on it, but the entire thing isn't fully charred all the way through. Actually, this end might be mostly.
So that's the sign. If it's coming out, then it's charred. And
Well,
it's
so
ready.
I don't know. Does anyone want to hold char? Okay, so that's partially charred. This is probably going to be fully charred. And check this out. See how it just does that?
Yeah, nice.
See that? So it's all the way through. If anyone again wants to get their hands nice and black, feel free. So majority of this has been charred. Let's see if this guy is. Yeah, so this has a little bit of wood left in it, but I think this one's pretty charred. Yeah. So that's nice and charred. Again, just what I would change for the future is more kindling. I had limited amount of room in my vehicle to bring, and so that's kind of partially why I only brought so much kindling. But ideally, I actually would have brought like another bin of kindling or a half a bin or something to make sure that everything fully cooks. Or if we were limited and we wanted to be very particular, we could have left the larger logs out. But I kind of wanted to put them in there because I want to show you the difference between fully charred and not fully charred.
So Daniel, can you overdo it?
Yeah, because if you overdo it, it'll just turn to ash. Yeah, and then the thing with ash is, the ash really is, it can, in small quantities, it definitely has soil benefits, because it's got like micronutrients and stuff, but it is, it's got like a lot of alkalinity to it, and most of our soils are pretty alkaline because bacteria tend to take your soil more alkaline, fungi tend to take your soil more acidic, and most soils around here are, again, full of bacteria, so they're already pretty alkaline. And so you don't want to add too much ash because then you just really throw the pH of your soil off, and then all of a sudden your plants can't access the nutrients. It's kind of like your stomach's supposed to be acidic, right? If you were to make your stomach not acidic and make it alkaline, you can't digest your food anymore. And so the root system is very similar for a lot of the plants. Every plant's stomach's a little bit different in its acidity and alkalinity, but generally speaking, they tend to like to be slightly acidic, and if you put too much ash, then you can ruin the stomach essentially, and then you're going to have to foliar feed until you fix the stomach. So I tend to use char more and very little ash.
Do you use the microscope to kind of see how good you made your jar?
I haven't done that. I know some people that have done that. I'm just so busy. I was actually going to open my own lab for a little bit, and then I realized I'm so busy. I'm doing all this soil stuff, and so that's why I partner with. I have a lab friend that she does all my lab stuff. Janelle is actually is kind of like does a lot of microscope stuff for CAC, and so having smart friends, having community, just like the soil life, right? Instead of trying to do every job myself, but there are plenty of pictures online, and you can see how different materials have different structures. And I've actually heard from some people, I haven't tested this, but I've heard that if you spray a compost tea and essentially sacrifice the initial organisms, like to essentially put out the char, that they can actually embed themselves and change the structure of the char and allow for essentially a future inoculation of similar sized microbes, because it kind of helps kind of form similar sized pores for like of those microbes. So all of a sudden now it's perfectly sized for the same, relative microbe to come in. I haven't tested that, so I can't say for certain. I'm sorry, Adam, you had a question?
Yeah, how big a batch can you make at once?
You can make a big.
If you laid it out carefully and you're very
Yeah.
specific about it.
Yeah, we've done like I said, 30 foot by 12, 15 foot, and we had a pile like yay big, and we had a giant pile of char. It was probably about like this big, and it wasn't that full 30 foot, but we had a lot of charcoal. So you can do quite a bit. That PDF that I passed around earlier, that kind of gives you some step by step. If we don't have it, the QR codes gives you a link to the PDF as well. And then if you have any questions, feel free to ask me, like even if they just come a little bit later, I'll be around.
If you want to like monitor it for a couple of days, can you take a container of water and lift this and put it in the water for 2 days, or is it going to ruin the purpose where the charcoal is absorbing water, or
I think you'd be fine. As long as the water isn't heavily contaminated, because if the water is heavily contaminated, then yeah, you're going to just absorb all of that into your char, or onto your char, excuse me. But no, I don't see any reason. If you were like, especially like up north recently, they were like terrified of fires. I could see someone being like, you know what, I'm gonna put all of this char in a bucket full of water, put a lid on it, and walk away, because it might make them feel a little more comfortable. So yeah, as long as the water's clean, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Woo! Black gold. Yeah.
Janelle, can we see this under microscope?
That's what I was
Or is it?
Probably, but usually they use different types of microscopy to look at things like this that are not transparent.
It's like an electron microscope.
Yeah, electron microscope is one of the most common ways that they can see that.
I said a microscope, but electron usually.
Unfortunately,
Yeah, and they're
it's a
fancy.
compound microscope.
Yeah.
If you know funders who want to buy us an electron microscope.
Interested.
Let's take
Something to it.
Right. So that was fun. So if there's not any last minute questions, then
So,
okay.
would it essentially be taking on the same beneficial characteristics as clay because of the adhesion properties?
It's so rare.
So like the cation exchange capacity kind of, yeah. So basically, like clay is known for having. Oh, stuff, man, sorry. Turn on my fancy one. Can you hear me now? Hello, testing 1 2. I think I killed the battery on this. Hello, testing 1 2. Hello, 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 hello. There we go. Okay, so he was asking if it has a similarity to clay and in terms of like its holding capacity. So it does, because essentially the clay has what's called a cation exchange capacity that's pretty high. It's just basically got like a magnetic quality to it that has the ability for things to bind to it really readily. Charcoal has excessive cation exchange capacity, has huge amounts of magnetism to it, so they're very parallel in that. And actually, if you want to look more into it, it's called the mollisols. I think it's mollisols. They're native. It's like a Northern American region, a North America region of soils that scientists have found to be like just natural, man-made soils with high amounts of carbon materials in it, and the cation exchange capacity is through the roof. So yeah, definitely the charcoal has similarities in that fashion.